I'm Angela Moonen, and I want to read this opening quote to you that I just shared with Judith and Tom. When there is beauty in the character, there is harmony in the home. When there is harmony in the home, there is order in the nation. When there is order in the nation, there is peace in the world. So, welcome everyone. Hello, Amy. Hello, Linda, Sherry. We've got some wonderful folks on with us today. Thank you. Thank you. I think Lynette's going to be joining us at some point here shortly as well. With that, we are recording. I'm going to get started. So you are very familiar with my guests today, and before we start asking questions and having a wonderful conversation, I want to share a little bit about our guests, and many of you know them already in some way, shape, or form. But Judith Simmons is a musician, an artist, a teacher and minister, an author, of course, a counselor, and a businesswoman. Thomas, uniting space and mathematics, Thomas Simmons is a past Air Force officer, missile combat crew commander, photographer, and aeronautical systems engineer. And together, today, we're going to talk about how they integrate their passions, how they lead a creator's life, their purpose and their path, their role in the publishing world, and how that landscape has shifted so dramatically. And then ultimately, how they cultivate and sustain that childlike spirit of curiosity and exploration. They, as a couple, counsel people, they invest in people, they promote Peacock publishing, of course, and they bring Tai Chi Gong to their families and communities, nurturing one person at a time. So with that, I welcome you both, and I thank you for being here and investing your time and energy. Say hello, Judith. Say hello, Thomas.
Thank you for inviting us to be with you.
It's really a privilege, and I have never been interviewed so thoroughly as what you did with us last week. I think you know us more than our family and closest friends now. You asked every question about us, so we'll see where you take us today.
It's a journey, right? It's finding that balance literally between exploring and letting things be spontaneous, but also giving everyone some kind of North Star on where we're headed through all of this, so there aren't too many surprises.
And one thing I did ask, if somewhere in this I could give a couple examples about healing and forgiveness, we could tuck that in there somewhere.
Absolutely, yes. And maybe what we can do, Judith, is we can close with those sentiments so that we are all bolstered up to go out and practice. So I'd like to read something that Judith sent me to you all, and you may have seen this. I referenced it in last week's episode, and she sent me this beautiful pamphlet called I Talk with the Trees. And this, I think, gave me such a glimpse into who you are, Judith, as a spirit, as your soul communicates so beautifully with us here on earth. We trees upon this earth withstood mankind's destructive thoughts that have reverberated throughout the nature kingdoms. These thoughts have tested our tenacity, as we have outlived mankind's various ages throughout history. The tree devas have urged us on through the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the pestilences, and diseases. We remain sure-footed and firmly planted in our strength and determination, even through the fires and the floods. We are determined to give our wisdom strength to the hungry world members that need our offerings. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen written, and it conjures up, and then it goes on to talk about, she talks, you know, the oak. She speaks as the oak, as the redwood, the pine, the cottonwood, and finally the maple. And if you don't have a copy of this, you should go to Peacock Publishing. It's easy, beautiful, resonating wisdom, easy to read, and almost like a little mini nature Bible for me that I'm gonna keep by my side because it's magnificent.
I didn't know I'd start wanting to cry. We're gonna have some fun first. I gotta
So
tell you how this came about. In meditation, I have angels talking to me a lot. An angel, well, how many trees? I think there are 5 trees. An angel said to me, in the next 5 days in meditation, you're going to have a different tree diva come talk to you. That's how this book came about.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And do you get time to spend with the trees? I know
God,
we
yes.
have, I know Dawn and so many people within the circle of Chi family are just gravitate towards trees. And I think, there's how they communicate with one another. And there's, there's art and science to all of this. And there is science. And Tom, you and I, I'm a quantum physics geek, right? So you and I could talk art and science all day long, but the trees communicate. And when you're looking for strength and leaning up against the 200-year-old tree, I mean, where else would you get more strength than a 200-year-old oak, right?
We should have some pictures of some of the trees that we deal with in the summertime, in particular. We head to the mountains here, northern Arizona. A lot of people just think it's a big desert. Well,
Yes, it's mountainous.
Arizona has the largest ponderosa pine forest in the country. Just ponderosa.
World.
Not in the world.
Oh, okay,
I would
sorry.
think Russia.
Sorry,
It feels
sorry.
like the world, right?
Anyway, and so we go up. We have a timeshare up there that we can stay for a long period of time.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we go out. That's one of the first things we do. We go out there on these big trees, the biggest ones we can. It's a thick forest anyway, where we are. And we go and we back up to these trees, and it's just amazing. They do communicate with you.
Oh, yes. And this is
In fact,
demonstrated too. Scientifically, it's demonstrated how, and that's, you think about some of the way that movies and Hollywood have adapted through Avatar, et cetera, and the life of trees and how they are integral to our well-being. And Karen and I have talked a lot about this too, with her portals through her mandalas. The significance of the sacred geometry and the way that nature itself presents that and embodies that and imbues that. I'd like to share my screen again if I could, so we can show some of your other works, Judith. And maybe what we can do is we can use it as a little roadmap for you to talk about your inspiration and how this comes along and how you find the world of publishing today. So let me share my screen and go back to our PowerPoint. So,
How nice of you.
and this, and y'all, this is a fraction. This is a fraction of what Judith and Peacock Publishing have put into the world. But talk a little bit about your connection with our country. And there's the Declaration of Independence you actually recited, and talk a little bit about your
Besides beloved Jesus and beloved Rasaji and the Lamasery and beloved Archangel Michael, who's been protector of my life, I'm also so in love with Saint Germain, Ascended Master Saint Germain of the I Am activity. And it's through that these discs came forth, especially the mystical destiny of America. Some of the stories are so extraordinary of how this country was founded. The first one about the Declaration of Independence, I was concerned about Colorado changing from a conservative state to a more opinionated state, and seeing some dangerous decisions in the state. And something led me to go down to the main Denver library, and I was starting to read the Annals of Congress. And I was able to copy the first 2 years, just like when the first 2 years of the 1800s, when George Washington was anointed president.
17.
In the early 1800 journals, after Washington was president, he dismissed Congress so they could all go and pray. So many examples of how we should not take religion out of schools. And something got me to go copy as many as I could. And what was so strange, each time I went in about once a week, I'd copy several dozen pages. And each time I went in there, the copier machine was closer and closer to the desk. And then about the fourth day, they say, we can't let you do this. And I said, there's no copyright on this. No, we can't let you do this anymore. And I had this strong feeling that some of these things are going to disappear. And anyway, I was inspired to do the Constitution. But so many things about the Republic, if those of you who believe in past lives, I believe I was part of the early founding before we became a republic. So part of that is within me too.
Well,
That's
And I noticed
Tom,
that
yeah,
you,
Tom.
my family's been in this country since 1621. And we came on the Fortune, which was right after the Mayflower. And I have a very strong connection to the Native Americans in this country.
I was just going to talk about, yes, and that is
don't look
next,
at,
yes.
but my brother does actually. My brother's darker skin and everything else. We have the same parents, but I'm just lighter. I picked up things from, I guess, my mother's side of the family, probably.
And you served our country.
Oh, God, did he? Oh.
Can you talk a little bit about your service and thank you for your service?
Well, I went into the Air Force right out of college. As soon as I was commissioned, I went through the advanced ROTC program. In fact, I was a cadet colonel in that program. And I was sent off. This was during the Vietnam War. And I'd actually, I must have been crazy, but I actually volunteered for Vietnam. But they wanted me to go into the missile program. So I ended up in the middle of Kansas, where we had these Titan 2C ICBMs. These big complexes were spread all over out in the farmland and everything. And, so I spent my time underground, but it was
How long?
14 stories, the
Underground.
you're way down there. I mean, the actual,
How long were you underground for?
excuse me.
How long were you
How-
underground?
Okay, our shifts actually ran about 30 hours each shift. We had places to sleep, so late at night, two of the crew members would go up and sleep. I'd usually send my deputy up. I started out as a deputy commander on the crew, and then I was I don't know, I just quickly became the commander of the thing. And in fact, there was a funny story with that one. They put me as commander in the same crew I'd been a deputy on, and they just brought in a new deputy. So I'm sitting down there one day, and something went on down there, and I said, you better go up and wake up the commander. And the sergeant next to me says, sir, you are the commander. Oh yeah, I forgot.
All right, the buck stops with
So-
me.
You gonna tell them about the trays?
Huh?
You gonna tell them about the trays?
The what?
The trays you had to pull out?
Oh, well, I don't know. No, I don't think we should talk about that.
We almost had a bad accident.
There
He's
was
not
a-
supposed to talk.
Yeah, there was an error that happened in the computer system in Mike's site. And the system tried to launch it.
The fuel was mixing, the doors were opening.
Oh, my gracious.
Anyway.
Living on the edge,
I had
Tom.
to
You were
just-
living
I had
on the
to
edge.
He's pulling out all these trays, throwing them
Yeah,
across the
I knew
room.
exactly where the problem was. It was a
Computers.
control monitor group, and we just pulled all these trays of the computer out and threw them on the floor. I mean, we destroyed the thing because it stopped the
It
launch.
stopped the process.
Anyway,
My
so I get
goodness.
this call on the red phone saying, "What the fuck are you
Red
guys
red
doing?"
phone is not ever a good thing.
And it was the commander of Strategic Air Command. And I
The
told him what had
planes.
happened, and he says, "Oh, good job."
Oh,
Don't
thank
tell
you
him.
for your service. Yeah.
Don't tell anybody or your dad or whatever.
Oh.
We got into all kinds of stuff. But Barry Goldwater nominated him for the Air Force Academy. But he
Yes, you shared that with me, which is incredible.
So Tom didn't get in. But Reagan also had high regard for this man.
Oh, wow. Who?
President Reagan.
Oh, well, yeah. No, I,
Oh, well,
Yeah.
shucks. Yeah, right, him.
He had high regard for him, so there was some.
Well, I think
anyway, it was,
probably most.
we talked too much about that stuff.
Let's say one thing. He was major with the nav system we use today. He was a major player in Star Wars, even though it so-called didn't exist.
That was in my system security, the security, not the security, but the.
Where were you at that point in your life, Tom? Where were you at spiritually? When you're around all of this and you are wearing a uniform, where are you at spiritually at that point? Give us some context.
It was not a good place. That's a terrible responsibility. And see, they upgraded me. Most of the commanders were all senior captains or majors, the commanders of a crew. I was a first lieutenant when they
Some
did
people
that.
don't know what that means, but
And they immediately made me a captain. The Strategic Air Command was different than the rest of the Air Force. They could do that. Anyway, so I was young. I was awfully young, and it was a high responsibility.
Yes, my
But,
goodness.
it was mind numbing. I really didn't. I would have done what I had to do, but I didn't. I wasn't
Well,
real
we
thrilled
talk
about the idea of blowing up some city somewhere.
Yeah. We talk about resilience. I think that's going to be a common theme for the world that we live in today. And how do you Joe Land and I talked about this last week. How do you build resilience? The only way to do it is to be in it, right? Is to have your sleeves rolled up and going through it, because that's the only, it's like, how do you strengthen a muscle with some kind of force against it, right? So whatever was cultivated 14 stories down in the ground brought you to where you are today. So talk about, though, that path of how the two of you met and what that was like for you, what it has meant for each of you in this lifetime to join forces. Wonder Twin Powers activate. That's what I think of. I think of Wonder Twin Powers activate, because the two of you are different and yet you work together so well.
okay. My beautiful late husband, Wayne Parr, wonderful man. We had a wonderful marriage for 20 years, passed away. And about a year and a half after that, I'm talking to my webmaster and she says, "You got to write an autobiography. That's so many stories." And I said, "No, not yet. I'm not ready to do that." I walked and she left and I walked into the living room. There before me was the upper body in an ethereal, some would call it ghost, but this ethereal form, and his voice said, "It's time for you to meet your new mate." And this was a Friday afternoon and I cried all weekend. I couldn't believe, I didn't think I'd ever get married again, let alone. And I started having these bizarre dreams. Every night it was some strange guy, like a 7-foot giant, skin pole, a short little dwarf. And somebody, the universe was playing jokes on me, and I said, "Okay, I've had it. I got the idea."
Got it. I got it.
And then I had this girlfriend my geek girlfriend, who taught me to type my first book, my meditation book, and put it on the computer because I didn't know anything about this. And one Friday again, she comes in, she turned on my computer, said, "I want to show you something." And it was a date site. And I said, "Not me. I'm not going to do this. Forget it. I don't even want to look at it." So, "Well, look, you got little things. You can show your pictures. You can say whatever you want." I said, "How do you know they're telling the truth?" And she said, I don't, just turn it off." Well, it's that Sunday afternoon. I thought, well, after thinking about, oh, let me go see what she's talking about. Well, I signed up for Metro Denver, somebody in the area, and I told a bit the kind of person I was and what I would like to have a friendship. In the meantime,
I was doing the same thing in Colorado Springs on a totally different site. The two don't get together. They don't.
No.
I don't know. Came from nowhere. This was a setup, boy. Somebody was really wanting us to get together. You can guess who. Anyway,
and it was also the Colorado Springs
well,
area.
yeah, and I was strictly, I just wanted somebody in the Colorado Springs area. I was trying to find someone. I was divorced. I had a couple of kids I was raising by myself, so which made it kind of difficult because there weren't too many people around that want to take on a couple of young kids that aren't theirs. Anyway,
After weeks of talking to each other, emailing each other, we said, "Well, we better meet." We met in a restaurant and immediately knew each other from Egypt and not much longer from India. We knew each other immediately.
And you were both in that place at the same time, spiritually, to the point of you were that aware that you recognized.
well, no, this is two people we've never met. I'm sitting in the restaurant just waiting, and she comes in. She doesn't sit across from me. She sits next to me. I'm going, "Well, that's interesting." and
Go, Judith.
anyway, I just went from there. It was very interesting how that occurred.
Well, we thought immediately we found each other again and knew we'd been looking at each other forever. And I also thought, here's my best friend again. And it was not intimate at all for the longest time. And one day, he's supposed to come up for the weekend, back to see me over the weekend. Can I tell?
I don't know. Don't take too long with
I
it.
woke up early in the morning and the message was, how come I'm getting emotional today? He's not coming to see you this weekend. Right now, go see him now. He needs it. He's very ill. Get to him right now. I didn't know where he lived. I didn't know his address. I called, the kids answered the phone, and I said, I didn't know if they knew. I said, I think we're going to change our plans for this weekend. Can I come and see your dad? I think he's a little sick, isn't he? And yeah, his son answered the phone. He said, yes, he is. I said, can I have the address? Tell me instructions. I will leave right now. Well, Zoom, I jumped into my clothes. I think I combed my hair. I grabbed some Young Living essential oils and went to his house. They showed me this man was so terribly ill. The Young Living essential oils and whatever I was led to do by God, to touch him, touch for health, Reiki, whatever I was doing.
Well, I'll just quickly let you know what it is. I have an autoimmune disease called sarcoidosis, and it's
lung. It was a lung issue.
Anyway, and it was
terrible.
I was misdiagnosed, so they were treating me for something else, and I was about to.
Anyway, it was miraculous, and then he said to me, just when we were sharing that at the interview with you, he said nobody else knew it or came to me like you did. Anybody else he knew. The kids didn't realize how sick he was, but it was it switched so fast. after
Now,
that.
how did you together make your way into Peacock Publishing? How and when was that established, Judith?
It was
Obviously,
started,
you wanted a voice, right?
it
You
was
wanted,
already started, but Tom's now
okay.
editor number one. Um, it expanded. Well, here's another, well, okay. It's gone through, you wanted to mention something about publishing. Amazon has changed the world completely. Businesses no longer need to have shopping centers. The little guy can sell things from home. It's a wonderful thing. They've changed publishing drastically. Publishing used to be so cutthroat and such a close margin.
Yes,
And
and you had to funnel it through a very restrictive channel of options and opportunities,
absolutely
right?
very competitive.
Yeah.
I was told clearly, when you write these books, you're going to publish them. You're not going to count on anybody else. They'll dump it if they don't sell right away. You get them, you do it yourself. We'll show you what to do. You do it yourself, and they'll stay on the shelf and they'll stay available to people. Well, this is in the 1980s when it first started, but Tom and I have continued it. Now that we are so in love with Master Lama Rasaji of Tai Chi Gong and the Lamasery and all these beautiful teachings, we've learned to not only learn to breathe, to live longer, but to be even more excited. We're 80 years old, and instead of winding down, well, what the heck? Let's redo
You're
this.
spiraling up.
Let's do this website and get it more active for phones and da 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 da. And instead of thinking of slowing down, which we thought we were going to do, and retired and have more fun in the ocean, ha 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 ha, we really stepped up. It's like we work 10, 12 hours a day instead of 7 or 8. And we
So
love it.
now I'm going
We're
to
so
share my
grateful.
screen because I want to talk. We touched on the Native Americans, Tom, and I want to touch on your book here, Judith, on Chief Wanamaker's words of warning.
Oh,
You wrote this when we were in the car
oh,
driving somewhere.
I said, can you stop? Our daughter Brienne was with us, and she was so shocked at what I was doing. I said, we were in Utah coming back, and coming back to Colorado. And I said, can you stop the car or please be silent for 10 or 15 minutes? And I'm pinning this so fast. I can't do it by the typewriter, by the way. I have to use a pen or paper. I always have paper with me so I can do my thing. I wrote it so fast, and that's what happened. That's Chief Wanamake talking to us.
And so when I was growing up, my grandmother was a professional organist, jazz organist, and my parents were 16 years old when they got pregnant for me. So my grandparents were as much my parents as my parents were. So, and they were still growing up themselves. They got married at 17 years old, and they would, the weekends would come and they would do their thing, what 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds would do. And my brother and my brother's 3 years younger than me, but we would go to my grandmother's. And it was like going to the carnival every weekend. She was that grandma that made everything fun and made everything an adventure. And she would play the organ, and I would stand next to her and sing. And she had on, and this is from, my earliest memories forward, she had this beautiful Indian chief with his piece of a sculpture, painted sculpture out of clay, adobe, and on sitting on the organ. So he watched me sing, and I watched him while I grew up. And when I went to college, although I studied music, I always had this affinity. And I studied with a professor, Professor Keith. I did history as another major alongside my music. And if I didn't go into music, I was going out to tribes in New Mexico to do work there. with the Native Americans in New Mexico. I was so inspired by Professor Keith, and we've all had those professors, those teachers, the handful, right, that really make a mark and open your mind up to new possibilities and no judgments, no, just fueling the curiosity. And he was one of those professors. And years later, my grandmother did beautiful stained glass, and I still have it today. A museum has asked me to donate it, and I want more people to enjoy it than just me, but it's
Not yet.
it's it's my grandmother. So she did this beautiful piece of stained glass of an Indian chief on a white horse. And he's got like the feathers flowing down over the horse. And this piece is, I mean, stained glass, how challenging that can be. And this stained glass piece is probably 4 feet by 4 by 6 feet. It's almost as tall as me. It's a massive, massive piece. And she willed many pieces to me. But the Indian chief is the one that I resonate with. And how about you, Tom? Like you said, that there's something with, I studied shamanism as well. And now that's a different kind of, right? But the animals and nature and plants in healing and in medicine, they're so intricately woven because we're all dealing with the same pharmacy, right? I mean, it's God's pharmacy. It's all the same place. What is your affinity with it, Tom? And can you talk a little bit about that?
You're talking about with the
Indians.
Indians, you bet.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I grew up with them, and there are several tribes down in the valley. I grew up. I'm a native of Arizona, but I grew up in the valley, in the Phoenix area. It's
Okay.
hotter here where we live now, and so I went to school with several Indians here, the Pimas and some Papagos, and but at one point, my dad knew this man down the street that worked for the White Mountain Apaches. He was one of their administrators. He helped them with a lot of things. And so we went up north to the White Mountain Apache Reservation.
Yeah.
And went to the chief's house. So I got to meet him, but his son was there. And of course, the interesting thing was, we were young teenagers at that time. And so they had this game that they like to play up there, the Indians did. There are wild burros out, and you go catch one, and you jump on it and see how long you could stay on without it fucking you off. It wasn't very long, but anyway, we became friends, and so that's what was my connection with them. And where we go now is in Pine Top, which is right next to the White Mountain Apache Reservation. And Fort Apache there is on the reservation. That's the old Fort Apache from the
Yes. Yes.
It's interesting that it's on their reservation.
And we've met some Indians who kind of wanted to adopt
But
us.
but they're so much involved with nature. I mean,
it's integral.
and
It's
they have all these ideas and things to heal people too.
It's so beautiful. It's so absolutely beautiful.
Good people. I really love them.
Yeah.
If you, I talk about sometimes quantum physics, and we think about alternate versions. And I imagine an alternate version of our world in cooperation with them. And what we could have learned should we have chosen that particular version. And even today, I worked with a tribe. Because they're losing their stories.
And their trades.
because the younger,
Totally,
yes, the
right.
younger generations are coming up through, and like anything, it is they get further and further away from their roots, and they're not fostering their own story and keeping that aspect of their story alive. Now, part of that is they are becoming, and we are all rising up, and we are all moving into new versions of ourselves. But the some things are time honored truths, and certainly healing. I like to think of when you're evolving and moving up, you're shedding the things that don't serve you. And I find it hard to believe that understanding nature and Mother Earth and animals and spirit animals, etc. I know I saw that Amy, that you said, yes, that Amy thinks the peacock is her spirit. She's been told this peacock is her spirit animal. I want to talk a little bit about that because I'm very tied to animals and animal messengers. So I love the fact that you have peacock as your icon, and your name. But what I worked with a tribe on storytelling, of cultivating their own stories. And I had to be very mindful of, I'm meeting with the elders. What questions could I ask? What questions could I not ask? And I was so nervous. And I remember saying, like what we said about today, I sort of have a true north. No, I know I shouldn't say sort of. I have a true north on where I want to take an interview or a story. But I give it the space to become it on its way. And it's so much more meaningful and creative when it's stream of consciousness like that, when you're allowing God and that energy to move through you instead of predetermining something or making a decision or a judgment about something. So I just decided I knew a phrase that I wanted to move them to. And I was going to write a song for them so that their entire tribe could learn the song. And if they sing the song, they feel unified again, because music, of course, is such a unifier, right? So I have and I imagine in some way, I have never been told this, but I imagine in some way from a past life that there's an affinity there. There's a reason that aside from the fact that I grew up staring at a sculpture of one my whole youth, that there's something there, that paths have crossed in a past life, etc. So talk about the peacock.
May I share my Native American?
Yes, please.
I had a respect and a relationship with Sun Bear, the author. Some of you know Sun Bear. I also, my late husband and I were also patrons to help the Native Americans have in Colorado American Indian Day. It's in June. I don't think it's June the 1st, but we stood at the Capitol and took pictures with everybody. It was a wonderful day, the first time they called it that. And I hope they're still remembering it every year, just to honor the Native Americans. One day I was in my office doing payroll. And by the way, we have a giant redwood, you call it a coffee table, but it encompasses the whole, it's the whole centerpiece of the entire living room. It's a giant redwood table. And one day I was in the office doing some work, and I came out from the living room. Oh, I stopped and froze, because around that table were Indian chiefs sitting. There were about 12 or 13. I didn't have time to count. They were like this and meeting together. I was in such awe. And after, I've never seen them again, but after that moment, I think it was after we did the Colorado Indian Recognition Day. I think it was soon after that. Anytime I smell the smoke of a cigarette, tobacco, I think of them and Sun Bear, and sometimes I'll get that scent. Always, every time I smell roses, it's Mother Mary. But that Sun Bear thing was so extraordinary, so beautiful. Oh.
Wow, we should at some point share a picture of that table because I would like to see
Well,
it.
come
Sounds,
visit.
sounds
A lot of-
magnificent.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you asked about the Peacock. Well, we,
yes, the
the
peacock.
property in Inglewood, when we first started, we had this very large landscaping business. Talk about art. We did so much across the state, building dams. Half of the Air Force Academy was our work. So many, especially at the chapel, so beautiful landscaping. We had an architect, I mean, this wasn't maintenance, this was building things and creating things. So we created all the time. We just happened to have up to 40 peacocks strolling around the place. So it just had to be when I started writing. I didn't know what to, I've been thinking, what am I going to call this company? And Wayne says, Peacock Publishing, what else? And there he had it,
Just like that.
just like that.
Well, you know, it shocked me the first time I went up to her property. These peacocks, you know, peacocks can be ornery and stuff, you know.
Yeah, they can be.
You know, they're
Yeah.
not real friendly.
No.
These peacocks, there are a bunch of them, were like puppies. They come running over, and because she always brought treats to them and everything when
They brought out
to
treats
the
after.
room, and it was funny. We just throw the stuff out there, and they just eat it up, and then come back over. I've never seen animals act
No,
like
because
that. Not
my aunt and
people.
uncle, my
Well,
aunt and uncle,
the other part of that is he can, sometimes if they're little babies and they have an infection, you do a little injection and you nurse them and do these things. So I had to go through a lot of these things with them. The local animal people knew if there was a sick bird or wounded bird or whatever, we would change up one of the bathrooms to their nesting area until they were healed. So we worked a lot with animals and birds in particular to nurse them back.
oh, that's so beautiful. My gracious, my gracious. Well, I'm fascinated with birds too. I'm fascinated with birds, and I think that over time, I mean, my spirit animal has evolved. I think as I have evolved, at one time it was the wolf when I was a woman in my 30s. It moved to a hawk, and in my 40s, and in my 50s now, it's actually I have been told elephant, but then I have owls in my backyard that talk to me and sit and turn their head and look right at me and they talk to me like I've only been here about a year, but when I was buying the place, he said, just be prepared because you have a couple resident owls and they love your backyard and they're safe here and they come and go, but they're here every night. I heard them again last night, but I'll go out. They'll be out there in the daytime. And I took my daughter out there and she said, Mom, he's talking to you. He's looking right at you and he's talking to you. I said, yeah, he is. So I very much, I'm in the process actually of putting animal messenger cards together. I use animals the way God used animals. I mean, it's the universe and God speaking to me through the animals that he puts on my path, and very super in tune to that. And my aunt and uncle raised peacocks, and I just remember them always being noisy. And
It's
then
only during mating time.
only during mating time. Okay, that's interesting. So I sent you, did you get a chance to see the video clip that I sent you, Judith, a while back?
Walking the street, they were wonderful.
Yes, when they're just walking this street, this abandoned area, not far from the mission in St. Augustine. And it was 2 weeks, 1.5, 2 weeks into the pandemic, and everyone was still kind of like sheltering at home. No one really knew what was going on. I wasn't sheltering at home other than to say I wasn't going to restaurants and things like that. Nothing was open, but I had a beach, luckily, so I could ride my bike and walk the beach. And I said, I've got to get in my car. I've got to drive around. This is crazy. And I went down to one of the busiest streets of St. Augustine, one of the most photographed streets in St. Augustine, with those huge draping magnolias that looks like a canopy all the way down the road. And I'm driving 5 miles an hour. That road normally is littered with people and water bottles and kids and cars, and there wasn't a soul or a sound except those 3 peacocks just a white one and the two blue ones walking down the street. Just the
Walking
most
the street like they own the street.
like they owned the street. And I remember at the time when I did the video, because I posted it on Facebook, and I said, you know, there are, and you all remember this during the pandemic, how the skies cleared over China and some areas of LA, the areas that were typically super, super dense with smog and air pollution, you know, cleared when everything was able, it was like we went through this massive cleansing. And that's what that street was a metaphor to me of, you know, allowing these beautiful creatures their lane, you know, let them take their lane, let them do their thing, let them strut their stuff. And they were definitely strutting their stuff. So talk about the peacock in general as a spirit animal, for the sake of Amy here. Amy, you've probably looked it up, but
Well, the peacock is a modern version of the phoenix. We don't have the phoenix running around, but it's a symbol of making the ascension, of the transformation. So it's a timely bird for this time, for the process we're trying to go through with being greater than we've been before. And when I was a young child, at the age of, well, we had difficulties in our family because until I was 8 and my father died right after that, we were pretty wealthy. After he died, we were very poor. So I learned a lot of things about that, but I cried through it and gave thanks through it and give me strength and teach me through this. But there was something that happened before my father died when I was about 6. He was a Catholic, but he married my mother who'd been divorced. And so he was excommunicated from the church. So on weekends, I was a Methodist, and during the week, he would sneak me with him to a priest for confession, and we'd do the candles and the coins and stuff. And it bothered, 6 years old, it terrified me and made me angry to see Jesus suffering so much on the cross. And while he's in confession, I'd wander around looking at things, and I'd stare at that cross, and I didn't like it. It'd scare me and it'd make me mad or whatever. I think the 3rd or 4th time I was there, I remember so clearly putting my hands on my hips as a 6-year-old. And I said, I finally figured it out. That is not the Jesus I know. And that was it. It never bothered me anymore, because during the time of trouble in my life, alcoholism, repeatedly problems, anybody who's lived in an alcoholic know exactly what I'm talking about.
yes,
Jesus
my father was a very, very bad alcoholic.
Wonderful, you know. So when I was a little girl, Jesus would come to my bed hundreds of times. Can you believe it? I don't remember how much he spoke to me, but he mostly remembered him holding me. But the main theme I remember is he said, or thought, the first half of your life will be very difficult, but it'll get better and better and better. So that 6-year-old decision was part of my acceptance of that. Then in the 80s, I had a friend, Cecilia Ferguson, who died from a terrible cancer. It was a big funeral. And I have some tears from it happening. But I hadn't seen Jesus in a very long time. And during the service, there's a minister at the podium. And all of a sudden, as I saw it on the right, there's Jesus in his golden body, his golden robes. His arms are up. And his arms are like he had yards and yards and yards of golden fabric. I don't know why I focused on that, but I did. But his hands are over the congregation. He said, death is no more. And I think, what? Because of him, we know we have eternal life. What does he mean? What does he mean? It wasn't until 3 years ago, meeting Master Lama Rasaji in the Lamasery in Tai Chi Gun, that I finally got it. Since the 80s, I've been wondering, what does he mean? What does he mean? I know in the biblical teachings is death is the last enemy to be overcome. I knew that. I knew with him we didn't have death, but what does he mean with it? So now with the beloved Darshan Lamasery, the 3,300-year-old Lamasery who was here before Christ, and beloved Rasaji and Master David teachers, we're learning to move the chi. I'm understanding what he meant. Death is no more, because as Rasaji, beloved Rasaji said, the door goes both ways into heaven. You don't have to die to find it. And we're finding it more and more because of this. And by the way, what does Tai Chi Gung mean? Does everybody know? I don't know. People, Tai Chi, the original teaching 3,300 years ago was Tai Chi Gung, and the Chinese families made diversions of it and did Tai Chi. Well, Tai Chi is movement of Holy Spirit, but Tai Chi Gung is us in God's temple, working with the Holy Spirit. And when you start doing Tai Chi Gung and feeling the Holy Spirit come in you and come out into the world, that's when your life gets changed. It's been a miracle. So the 6-year-old decision, seeing Jesus saying death no more, and discovering 3 years ago what he was saying, it's just extraordinary.
Well,
And
I want to share. That's beautiful.
Until Tai Chi Gung, I'm starting to think, well, we're kind of slowing down. I mentioned that before. We're kind of slowing down, but we're just doing the opposite now. It's just amazing.
I want to share. I've got another slide that I want to share here.
Oh.
There's Sherry. What is the Christmas cookies with the little
That's
girl?
the little granddaughter of ours. That was the
And-
tray that
and
first
her
one I did, and the second one she did, putting all this sugar. She found out later, and I said, that's going to be too much sugar. It's not going to bake very well. After we baked it, it was all smeary sugar, and she cried. And I said, oh, no, you just learned what I was telling you, that we don't put too much. Look how sweet she is. Look how sweet that is.
Well, and I support, there's a tribe at St. Joseph's School. I support a school for Dakota children, again, out in the West. And they're beautiful faces. They're beautiful little
We do
faces.
too.
Do you? Do
Yeah,
you?
we support
St.
the
Joseph's?
Southwest Indian
We
Foundation.
too,
out
as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all these different tribes.
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like, well, it's like that opening slide that was, when there's harmony in the character, there's harmony in the home. When there's harmony in the home, there's harmony in the nation. When there's harmony in the nation, there's peace in the world. And so the change that we want to be, we all know this, the change that we want to be, we need to be first. The change that we want to see in the world has to begin here with us. So with that, I'm going to go through my questions like I did with Joe. I told you all I was going to surprise you with some questions at the end to get you on your toes even more and spiral this up even further. And then Judith, I'd like us to close with your sentiments around forgiveness.
Okay.
Okay. To each of you, what is the secret of living well today? What do you think the secret is?
Living in the ever-present now.
Ever present, being ever present. So as a creator,
Being one with God as much as you can.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think helping other people is very important to living well. I feel better when I'm able to help people.
When you're giving. Yeah.
When
Money has never been our first priority.
before we were
Ever.
even married, we talked about if we ever had the money to do it, we'd like to set up a foundation
We still may
that
someday.
could help people, but we don't have that money yet. But
By the
we
way,
may get it.
he volunteered for the Special Olympics, and he was a coach, and he was a referee at the Special Olympics. Isn't that sweet?
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. So as a creator, who inspires you? And we will, I don't want to say we assume, of course, Jesus and Archangel Michael and Mother Mary and God and beauty. But are there people either walking with us today or on the other side or in the ether that inspire you, that you look to for inspiration?
Well, my grandparents on my mother's side were very special people. I don't know how to explain it, particularly my grandfather. He was like a saint. Anyway, they inspired me to initially when I grew up. In fact, we lived with them for a while when my dad was called back into the military after World War II for the Korean War.
How about you, Judith?
After my father, well, all that you said inspires people, thoughts, something, some phrase like your beautiful phrase at the start, God, meditations, being outside, but people, after my father died, I started singing and I babysat for piano lessons. I couldn't afford any. And for musical instruments, and he taught me how to read notes. I'm in the 4th grade, learning a brass instrument first, and then later became a professional French horn player. But he was teaching me music, and he was so kind to me. You'll never believe who he was. If you've ever heard Dan Fogelberg's song, The Leader of the Band.
Yeah, my daughter recorded it in a studio because it's one of her favorite
That's
songs.
his father, my band teacher, Larry Fogelberg, was my inspiration. Tom
Wow.
knows if I ever hear that song, I start bawling.
Oh,
Yeah, she does.
oh my goodness. It's right, because the song that Dan wrote was about his father, and that man was your teacher.
He
Wow.
was so kind to me. I have a sister who felt the same way. She was also a student of his, but he and I had a bit different relationship.
Okay, real quick,
Never know.
real quick question. What's your favorite word, Tom? Your favorite word?
I don't know. Love is a favorite word, but there are other. I'm not sure there are other things. I don't know.
Judith, how about
Grace,
I have no favorite.
grace? I love that word.
grace, but by the grace of God, that be me. Amazing grace.
Grace,
Oh, I
how
love that
sweet
song.
the
Yeah.
sound. Judith, we should have sung a duet. We should have practiced a duet.
I know
together.
Sherry and I've been trying to do it, but her voice is like 3 octaves higher than me. We're working on one we're going to try and do.
Yeah.
You and I think we can do it too. We need to. You have such a
All
good-
right. So before we have you wrap up for us, Judith, I want to, everyone I'm sure on here is familiar, but I think it's important to continue to reinforce it. You can go to peacockpublishing.com. And I would like to, if I could, just real quickly, is it still like all of us, it's still in a work, is a work of progress, I should say. And that is, I would like to show you the new website. So it's just at AngelaMoonin.com, my name. And it has my music on here. It has my photography. It has all of that. And the courses are still in the process of being uploaded. One of the courses is the Harmony Method. It is a money course. It's an 8-week course. And I also have a course called The Mindful Leader. And that is for people who are in leadership roles, whether it be in nonprofits, in their community, as an influencer, a large stakeholder, someone who is in a leadership role within an organization. It's specific, all the meditations, all of the practices, the exercises, etc., are all to do with that leadership role. And those are still in the process. It's a lot of content. So those are still in the process of being uploaded. But you can find previous episodes of the Living Well Today show here. You can see some of my quick videos on YouTube. So I just wanted to at least show everyone, because even I was having the conversation with Lynette, and I made the assumption that people would know where it was, but it's right at my name, AngelaMoonin.com. And I wanted to be sure to invite you to like the Living Well Today Facebook page I do a lot of stuff on there on quantum physics, just because it fascinates me. But there are my word of the weeks and other things where I try to integrate beauty in there, and I welcome you to come on there and comment and let me know as well if you're interested in being a guest on the show. This is it's so much fun, and I would welcome that. I know Lynette has sent me some really wonderful guest options as well, and I want to have Connie back. I want to have Care back. We'll have Care back on at some point. But in the meantime, with you two beautiful people, thank you ever so much for sharing a part of your journey with us. And I'm going to turn this over to you, Judith, and let you wrap up for us today.
Can I say one thing? One
Yep.
little thing real
Please.
quick?
Yeah.
To prevent problems in your life, please engage your brain before you engage your mouth. Because what you say, you can't take back. I mean, you may be forgiven for it if you said something really bad that hurt someone, but they'll never forget it. So that's an important thing that people need to keep in mind. Just think before you speak.
Yeah. I have this one client who he is, I call him Buddha. He's very wise, and he sits around the round table. I do what are called envisioning sessions for clients. They're futuring sessions, and help them build scenarios of where they can take their business and how to potentially predict some of those speed bumps and challenges they're going to come up against based on the competitive landscape and the industry that they're in, the driving forces and the trends that are happening in the world. This gentleman always, without fail, and I've worked with this company they've been a client since 2008. And he will, from the very first session that I did with them, and I do one once a year with them. He sat at that table. It reminded me of your redwood table. He sat at that table, and I bet he says in a 3-hour session, maybe 20 words. But the words that he says, to your point, Tom, have such gravitas. They're so powerful. And he's also trained everyone to understand that when Tony speaks, everyone leans in, wants to hear what he has to say. Everyone, they all want to lean in. What is he going to say? Right? Because it's this, So I believe that. Absolutely. I believe that. All right. With that, Judith, enough story.
Okay. First of all, those of us who love God, Jesus, our beloved teachers, can go directly to the source when we have a problem and just say, forgive me and heal this, and we believe it. But there's 90% of the people don't forgive themselves and cannot reach that goal. For 40, 50 years, I was doing public speaking, heal the chains that bind you, and what is your legacy? I always worked on forgiveness exercises. One simple thing to do is make a copy of the Lord's Prayer. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Circle every time it says, the Lord is my shepherd. I maketh me. Circle those pronouns, pronouns. And if you have a problem with somebody, 21 nights before you go to sleep, read the Lord's Prayer and say, the Lord is John and my shepherd. He maketh John and me, You'll be amazed at what happens. But here's something more important. Let's do something to change the limbic system in your brain. Can I go over just a little bit? Is it okay?
Do it, absolutely.
We have to leave. God bless you. Thank you. But if you can stay, let's just close our eyes for a minute. Close your eyes for a minute and go back. Perhaps sometime in school, or perhaps something most recent. Whatever comes to mind that you have issues with somebody, visualize that experience that embarrassed you or upset you. Take a deep breath and focus on it. Let's look at it. There's something you need to say to that other person you could never say. Say it now quietly to that person. Okay, now let that person answer you why they did this. And now that you understand the problem more deeply, say, please forgive me. I forgive you. And see if they'll do that to you. And if possible, give them a hug, shake their hand. It is over, it's cleansed, it's healed. It's no longer part of our lives. God bless you. Thank you.
Oh, that was beautiful.
It's a
Thank you
lot
so
longer
much.
version, but that's the best we could do in a short version.
Thank you. Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, yes, blessings to all. Be well. All the best for living well today. We'll see you all next week, we hope.
Come on.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.